Hello there, good evening. Welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt, and as you can see, I'm joined by no one because it's just me here to sit and talk about what was quite frankly, as it says on the tagline, unwatchable Celtic football. We came on here earlier on, Paddy and I, and we spoke about how it was a very steep hill that Celtic would have to climb. Looked like a mountain, actually. And aye, it panned out pretty much the way that unfortunately we imagined it. But in fact, telling a lie, I sat on here and I thought it would be a 2-0. Paddy was a bit more optimistic and opted for a win. But it is what it is, and we're just here to pick through the bones of it. As you can see, we are early. We'd set this for 20 past, as I was just on another channel there with the bold Terry Robb on Boys in the Bus, talking with him, and also with Dave about that match there. So I figured, let's just get straight on. Let's get this one done. Let's rip off the band-aid, get it out of the way, and we can put it to bed and look really towards the weekend properly. Get into the weekend and something a wee bit more enjoyable. So, as always, want to try and get your thoughts in here if you can. Bring them up. We'll try and make this a bit of a two-way conversation rather than me just talking to you. But I will share you my thoughts as we normally would on a breakdown. We would sit and we would talk more about the performances and less about the action. And that's probably going to be a wee bit more difficult to do than normal because in terms of the performances, I don't think there was many of a performance in that Celtic side. Certainly nothing that I would say resembles pass marks for too many people. Iheanacho, I would say, yes, good positive there, but we'll get on to him. But other than that, yes, it was lacklustre, as it says, and it just felt like Roma were cruising. Second gear, occasionally maybe they lifted it up into third. But you just sort of felt when you particularly looked at the bench and you saw the quality that and it's if, buts and maybes, if we converted some of the opportunities when they arose to us, that would that have just poked the bear? Would that have just angered them a bit? And would a loss have always been on the card? So we'll get in about it, as I say, get your thoughts up, let us know what you're thinking about that one, and we will talk through it. But before we do, as always, welcome back to the channel. We're well pushed over 3,000. The goal that we've tried to set, ambitious, lofty, but like Wilfred Nancy, you have got to set targets, you've got to set goals for yourself, and you've got to be ambitious. And our ambition is to hit 3,250 for the turn of new year. You can do that. You can help us out by hitting subscribe. It costs you absolutely that zero to subscribe to Celtic World Order podcast. If you want to be notified, hit the wee bell icon. That way you'll never miss it. If you like what you're seeing here, get a big fat thumbs up, share it, tell your pals, get more people in the community. You know what to do by now. And also member section, completely optional. If you want to donate to the channel, you can. Just helps us run that. So anyway, let's get down to business, as we say. How are you feeling? Just give me in one word, those that are watching at the moment as you're coming in, one word to describe how you are feeling and one word to describe the performance, and we'll try and get them up. I think for me, to quote Tavernier, it was disappointing. It was disappointing because I really, really thought that, albeit tonight very much felt like a free hit. I came on with Paddy and I said that I felt that this was just a bridge too far for this team. And I thought that even if Martin O'Neill and Maloney and co were still in place, that it was still going to result in the same thing. But why I'm disappointed is after Hearts, and we saw good parts in that. We saw a good opening 20, 25 minutes. Then, despite going 2-0 down, we saw the changes and with the best period in it. I've seen enough in terms of chances and what we're trying to do that I thought, okay, that's something to build on. We'll be a wee bit more pragmatic. Pragmatic, remember that word, because the manager actually used that in the build-up to it in his press conferences. He would choose to be pragmatic at times, and unfortunately, with his selection, with his persistence, I didn't see much pragmatism in there. So what we got here? Deflated. Absolutely. It was deflating, isn't it? Demoralised. Yes, demoralising. And this one, unsurprising. Unsurprised. Yes, exactly. Relaxed performance. Training, Strange Love goes for. It was relaxed, wasn't it? It was very relaxed, and let's get on about it. So as we came on, and we mentioned the lineup for the start, there wasn't actually much changes, and Paddy and I were quite surprised. But that is the biggest takeaway. I don't want to repeat what we said in the pre-show, but that was the biggest takeaway for me. I know that the squad, let's let's get the big elephant in the room out the way. The squad is thin. It is incredibly thin. It is low on quality. The options aren't quite there. And I like the idea of the three at the back. I do like it. I like the idea. I like the principles of it. And it beg the question, with what we currently have at this moment in time, do we have the quality and the ability to adapt so quickly to this squad? And I know it's only 2 games, and you know where my stance on it. You heard my rousing speech of support and let's put an arm around the manager. Nothing's changed there for me. But I think, come back to this idea of being pragmatic, we maybe need to quickly look at it and say, yes, certain guys aren't going to work in this. Certain guys don't have the legs, they don't have the grit, they don't have the fight. And I'm circling Taneki straight off. Taneki is diminishing returns, to say the least. He is a guy who is becoming a bit of a golden deceiver. He sold us an absolute dream against 2 bang average teams, and since then he's registered 2 goals and no assists. He's done nothing. He loads of running at folk, but with absolutely no end product, no penetration, no danger. He just looks good. He's like that wee guy, if you ever go and watch youth football, there's always that wee guy that's got all the tricks and all the skills, and he looks like a baller, but he doesn't actually do anything. He probably practices step overs and his Cruyff turns and all that kind of stuff, but doesn't actually have any substance to what he does. That is very much Taneki. And then, of course, there's also the question of Benjamin Nygren. Now, to a man, let me get this right out. To a man, in my opinion, you could take any of those players and there's nobody really that's getting pass marks. Maeda, non-existent. Benjamin Nygren, wow, I've got my notes here. Horrendous touch, lacks aggression, not closing down, just, you name it. Control, closing, touch. He could barely hold on to the ball. Anytime he received it, he was constantly being dispossessed. Hatate falling out the game, nowhere to be seen. McGregor, again, active, getting about the pitch, but not too much. Defensively, it was what it was, wasn't it? Ain't going to lie, but surprised at seeing Tierney getting pulled off at half time. I didn't think he was that disastrous. But yeah, for me, for my money, Nygren, Taneki starting off, didn't quite understand it. I was championing the idea of playing Iheanacho, and I think we got to see what he had to offer when he came on, a cameo. And when I was on with Terry, I says, a guy that looked like he knew how to play his position. He looked at a guy who'd played at a good level. He was sharp. He was joining up the play. He was dangerous. And what else I liked about him? He was vocal. He was putting it out there. He was, punching chests. He was shouting. He was egging folk on, doing all the right things. Moving forward, that has to be something that we need to look at. And that's, if you're taking it to Taneki, you then got to move over Maeda. But let's get in about the the way it all panned out. Aye. We concede that early goal, don't we? It was exactly the thing that we had to avoid. And I don't even know what to say about it. It's just, if you had written a script of things that were going to go wrong, getting that early goal into us was just absolutely the last thing that we needed. It just set up the tone from there. And we said previously that whenever Celtic owes a goal, that we often look a wee bit sort of shell-shocked, and I thought that did it reverberated through the team. The uneasiness, the occasion, the quality started to get on top of them. And again, I want to say, for all the quality that Roma have got, I don't think that they were like, holy shit, oh my God, like steamrolling. They were just comfortable. We made it harder for ourselves. The amount of loose passes, easy lossing of the possession that was self-inflicted with very little pressure on any of our players was frightening, absolutely frightening. And one of the main guys I want to highlight there, and I said this when I was on with Terry, see that opening 10, 15 minutes, Celtic were camped out pretty much in our final third of our box, particularly down that right-hand side. We were just desperately trying to pass the ball and keep it around. Instead of just shelling it, getting it as far away from our box as possible, maybe even to the park, give ourselves time to reset, recalibrate, and get back into some sort of structure. We made it hard for ourselves. Hard. And another one, Kasper Schmeichel, again, I could jump on anybody. Kasper Schmeichel's distribution, what on earth has went wrong there? That was a guy that we brought in and were like, great, goalkeeper, comfortable with the ball at his feet, good for this passing out for the back stuff. I counted in the first 30 minutes, there was 5 times that he had a misplaced, poor pass into the centre of the park where he just kicked it directly at a Roma player, or in the case of the chance where I think it's Ferguson hits the post, where he pings it into Hatate, who's not set, it bounces off him, and they get in behind. In fact, that's the one that he makes the save off of, and then he makes the save down to his right-hand side. Totally self-inflicted, and then he's got the cheeky audacity to run around and look at folk and shout and have a go at them. It started poorly, and then it just quickly went downhill from there. I think that, as I said, the early goal certainly didn't help us any. But the biggest concern I've got, and I want to know what your thoughts here is, right? For the avoidance of doubt, where I'm at with the Wilfred Nancy thing, you know this if you've been watching. I think that the reaction after the Hearts game was embarrassing. It was predictable, particularly for the mainstream media, for those, ex-players or wannabe ex-managers or whatever that have got a platform. It was just a pile on. It was unprofessional, it was embarrassing, and it was highly, highly predictable. Trying to stir a narrative of, we know that our fan base have been uncertain about this guy. A lot of people are still unsold on the idea, and it was an easy one to really split the fan base. And that's what the media has been doing. They've been going after him for everything, for his shoes, to his words, to what he said, to the tactics board, you name it. They have went fully in on him, 2-foot studs up. But that drives a wedge between the fans. And I think that when we look at what's happened tonight, it's going to be another one to batter him around the head with. He didn't have time, but the one thing I will say is he mentioned being pragmatic in his build-up. He said that he would look to be pragmatic at times, and we didn't see that. And I think when the rot set in so early and it started to go downhill, that's when we should have been thinking, right, what do we do? Is this system really going to work here? And again, I think he needs time, but the cup final now is looking humongous. I will say to lose it is unacceptable, and I would expect the pressure. He's putting himself. Why is he? Is it he's putting himself under pressure? Let me know. Do you think he's putting himself? Do you think he's putting himself under pressure? Do you think he's doing anything that's making it harder for himself? Now, when I was on with Terry, Dave had said he's wanting to come in and do his own thing rather than trying to maintain the status quo, trying to work to a different system that's not his beliefs, it's not the way he wants to play. If he then falls flat on his face trying to maintain something, he looks like a tit. If he does what he's doing here and he stands by his principles and it doesn't go well, he looks like a tit. So rocking a hard place. So I do understand that. But is he maybe making things tougher for him, and particularly putting a lot of huge pressure on this cup final now? Because listen, we've seen performances against Motherwell, we've seen performances against St Mirren, Dundee. These kind of rough performances are in there, and they could potentially be a repeat. I don't think there will be, but there could be at the weekend. So I understand why people are getting a wee bit sort of tetchy. Thank you very much for 20 for donating that. Very lucky people, whoever gets that one there. But yeah, coming back to what I'm saying, we know it's no secret the squad depth is non-existent. And as I said earlier on when I was on with Paddy, you look at Sarachi, you look at Carter Vickers, you look at Jota, you look at Alistair Johnson. If you've got them available, even though we're still mega thin and light, even with them in the team, things look a wee bit better. You look like you get a bit of breathing space, and you've actually got guys that you go, right, okay, this system's really going to work. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to put square pegs into round holes. Nigrin, Taneki, it's just not working. There's no that defensive cover. And it's always going to be hard trying to do a new system, particularly when you've had a week together with folk, but when you don't have the quality of player. So there has to be that wee bit of balancing act with him, I think, and there has to be a wee bit of sort of fairness there. But he does need to get it right quickly, and he needs to get it right absolutely bang on Sunday. That's the one thing I would say about it. But what I noticed in the game, and this is where I suggested, can these guys play this system? let me know if you noticed this. There was points for me in the game where players would receive the ball, usually for the centre half, would receive the ball and they'd literally stop. They'd be static, and they'd be like almost making eye contact with each other, looking as if, right, you're meant to be there, or you're meant to be there, and there was no fluency. There was no fluency. There was a lack of urgency. It just looked like nerves, and they were scared to express themselves, scared to make the pass. And it was summed up for me when there was the incident between El Shaarawy and Trusty. Trusty kind of throws him down to the ground, and the ref waves it on. But instead of pinging it out to the right hand side and getting the run on for Yang, literally the four guys just stop still, and they're looking. They're looking, even though they know that it's been played on, and it's as if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And that, for me, is the only concern I've got here. Could it be information overload? Could it be overload of information? Could it be too much too soon? And he said, and this is again, I've got to, as much as I'm backing him, I've got to make slight criticism about him, because he said that he would not change too much too soon. He would add nuances to the way that Celtic had already played. So as I said, what I thought that meant would be is roughly keep the same formation, roughly, but the nuances might be, as I said, the 1 and 2 touch play, less of the back passing, which we didn't get as much of tonight. That's got to be said. That's kind of largely been eradicated. We don't do it as much as we had been. I thought that's what the nuances would be, but there isn't any real nuances. It's just completely not different. The whole thing's different. So he's kind of saying one thing and then not doing it. And I think that's got to be sort of called out. But that really, really concerned me, because they were all looking at each other as if they didn't know where each person was meant to be. They didn't know where to make the pass. They didn't know where to make the run. And it just looked so disjointed. Now, a team like Roma is always going to expose your faults and your uncertainties, and particularly if you're bedding into a new system. Make no doubt about it. They will do it. Dundee probably won't. Touch wood. A St Mirren shouldn't be able to do it. But Hearts, Rangers, like I'm saying it, Hibs, these teams will. Even look at Dundee United and another game that's coming up. They've got enough about them to make that difficult. So this team need to sort of really get it together quickly. And another thing I noticed as well is there was a lot of what I would call the blame game. Misplaced passes were getting made, and they were basically, I know you've got to say something, what were you doing there, mate? But it looked as if there was a lot of sort of bickering and arguing and stuff, and frustrations venting out in each other, and that will eventually feed into it. If you're getting berated for making a missed pass or not making the run, chances are you're going to hide and you're not going to want to receive the ball as much. So that, for me, is the one thing that I'm concerned about. It just looks a wee bit disjointed for me. Back to things and back to performances, back to individual players. I highlighted Nigrin, I highlighted Taneki, and I've got to talk about them there. For me, and there we go. Played the ball forward, barely played it forward all night, and about 80% were back. I fully agree. I've got to say, for me, Taneki, I know I've jumped on him a wee bit, but I have to, because we knew that we were light, and when we brought in Balakwisha, we brought in Iheanacho, and we brought in Taneki, we knew we were so light in attacking options, and we says, those are the three guys that we are going to be turning to really provide us with the firepower, the assists, the goals, the creative spark. And Barry Iheanacho, who unfortunately then got injured, but showed it tonight, the other two have not done it. Taneki, as I say, 2 goals, no assists in about 20 games now. Loads of energy, loads of running about, but nothing. Benjamin Nigrin getting put into that midfield, he just cannot play that position. He just cannot play that position. The amount of times that the ball get pinged into him and he lost it was unforgivable. And then we get to half time, and as I say, the substitutions have to be made. I think Bernardo coming on is a good move. I don't think he was reinvent the wheel or doing anything wow, but he certainly, for me, looked comfortable. I would have, Negan, there's a decision to be made there for Sunday. I saw more out of Bernardo than I did Negrin. And then you've got Maeda, who again, he does nothing. He's totally starved. But I would have kept him on, and I would have taken off Taneki. I can't believe Taneki made it through that game. It's wild. One thing that he lacks is defensive fight and backtracking in the legs. You know you're going to get that out of Maeda. I just don't understand why the manager opted to drop somebody with the work rate of Maeda, and particularly the defensive capabilities of Maeda, to keep Taneki on. Again, this is stuff that we've got to question the manager on. Ralston, eventually comes on. He looks tidy enough when he comes on. Donovan comes on. And again, Tierney goes off. I didn't think Tierney looked that bad that he merited to come off. But Donovan comes on. I think, you know what, he looks all right. He looks quite stable. But it's just it's left me with more questions than answers. And there's the thing as well. As Robert Duck saying, if there's no goals in the team, how can you win the cup final? That's something we'll go on to. But I think, as I say, it's got to be Iheanacho. For me, it's got to be Iheanacho. We get 45 minutes out of him. He looked sharp. He looked like a guy that knew how to do his job. He was getting the right positions. And I just think, yep, he needs to start. Put your best foot forward. If you only get the first half out of him, make that happen, because I'd rather go into half-time maybe a goal, maybe 2 goals up, than at nothing each, and then having to pull them off. And then, God forbid, you go behind against a team that are just going to sit in. They're going to make it harder and harder and harder. And that's going to be tough for Celtic. Celtic need to put the best attacking team forward for Sunday, try and take the lead, and hopefully that breeds confidence and kicks through there. That's what we need to do. Well, let's look at the goals that we lose. As we said, the header, the OG from Scales, it's just poor defending again. And I thought Scales had a torrid time tonight against big Ferguson, who I still don't rate, but by God, he looked strong, and he was chucking about his fellow Irish internationalist. Scales has been good. Scales has been very good. He's been one of the sort of really bright sparks, if you will, in this Celtic team as of late, but he got absolutely mauled. He got absolutely mauled constantly. The second goal, again, it's a real breakdown. There's no, this defensive coverage that we're talking about, it's non-existent. Nowhere to be seen. Big gate in space, and they're just drive into that space. It's a nice wee move, and criticisms again, it's a good striker's move for Ferguson. He goes in, but he's getting between Trusty and getting between Scales. It just shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening at all. But what can you do? 2-0 down. The uphill battle is just looking massive. It's looking like a gaping chasm. There's very few chances for us. And again, ifs, buts, maybes. You never really know. The other one as well, the 3-0 is just, again, for me, unforgivable. I counted, I think it was eight of our players in around our box. And it's strange to say. See Ferguson. Ferguson was very good, right? I'm going to give the guys flowers. He was very good. And he took his goals well. The touch and finish is fantastic. I counted, though, we've got 8 guys in that box. We've got 8 guys. Now, Scales is trying to get touch tight, but he doesn't impose enough on him. I know that Ferguson's a bigger guy and he's strong as a striker, and he's far superior to anything that Scales would normally be up against. But the way that Scales has absolutely zero impact on what happens there, and more to the point, there's 8 guys around the box. The fact that we don't push, we don't press, we don't go out, and we allow the pass to come in it's just schoolboy. And again, 3-0. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Now, we weren't without our chances, that very, 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 very light chances to claw our way back into it. I think the best move in that half is undoubtedly the Hatate Skyer into the stands. Fantastic, good wee move. He's really got to be at least wanting the goalkeeper there, hasn't he? That, for me, I'm like, what? Maybe it falls to the wrong guy. Hatate is a bit low on confidence. Has many of the guys, but if it goes in, things maybe look a wee bit brighter. And then, of course, there's the penalty. I'll say it right now, light penalty. Absolute, as light as they get. If that gets given against Celtic, you're getting off your nut. But you can see there is a pull on the arm. Is it enough to sort of deck him? I actually think it's a bit wet and he loses his footing, but he's getting pulled enough that it incites the contact and obviously is given. Then we get to the penalty. And this idea of players looking uncertain and looking a bit shell-shocked. First we think Hatate's taking the penalty and I'm like, what's going on here? Why is Arnott Engels not taking it? And then we get that thing where we think McGregor's taking it, but no, he's going in. And apparently this is now the done thing where you just sort of shield the ball and let your guy get his composure, whatever. And then we obviously get in, even you plunge, good to have you in here so late, everybody else as well. As I say, I know I'm talking away here, I'm trying to do my best to try and be here and be there and try to get some opinions up. As I say, if there's anything in general you want to say, just fire it in and I will pick it up from under Plunge's comment. I'll try and keep my eye on it for you all. But yeah, Engels then steps up, who's largely been fantastic on penalties, but he does not look like he wants that responsibility. And that's what we need. That's when big moments in the game, big players need to step up, i.e. Hatate gets a glorious chance and he doesn't even walk the goalkeeper, doesn't even get the target. You've against teams like Roma and in Europe, you are going to have minute amounts of chances, and that's when you need to take them, because break that game down, every chance that Roma got, it goes in, or they've worked the goalkeeper, or they've hit the woodwork, right? Not Celtic, and that is the difference in class, and that's why it is fine margins, but that's why you've got to take chances when they present, and missing a penalty is unforgivable. I think it was confidence. I think it was fear. And you see it in his eyes. And then there's the whole looking back before he takes the penalty as well. He's not focused. Normally he'll step up, deep breath, eyes on the goalkeeper, knows he's going. His head's gone at that point for me. He's looking around, he's assessing everything around him, miss it. Between that and the Hatate chance, as daft as it sounds, you could be getting in a good place. You could be in 3-2 down. And then who knows what happens? Again, it's if buts and maybes. I think, to be honest with you, if we do score 1 or 2 goals, we probably just awake the beast, because we see the quality they've got at the bench. And, I think that they probably go and do what they want to do, because I just felt it was like second, third gear all the way for them. But, yes, looking at it, 3-0, what are you going to do? The subs are rung half-time. And, yeah, as I says, we get Donovan, we get Iheanacho, we get Bernardo. I think Bernardo, it's good to see him getting into the team, because I think he's a tidy enough player, and I think it's definitely food for thought for the cup final. Again, I would also debate Hatate's position in the team for the cup final. I'm looking at Hatate, I'm looking at Taneke, I'm looking at Nygren, and I'm severely debating should those guys start at the weekend. I definitely think Iheanacho's got to come in. I would probably say there's a good shout to give Bernardo, because we've seen Luke McCown. We kind of know exactly what you're getting out of him. And as I say, you need to be moving Maeda and utilise him on the wing. I think Donovan gives a decent account of himself. I did. I thought he looked pretty decent. He looked positive. And obviously the hand in the phantom goal that we didn't get. Iheanacho for me is the gold star. Maybe the bar's so low, but he looked threatening. He looked up for it. He very much looked that guy that was trying to make up for lost time. And I debated if he was the kind of guy that Wilfred Nonce would like, because his style of play sometimes drops deep, joins up the play, but no, instinctive and also a leader. You could tell that he's played at a higher level than those guys around him. The thing is, we just need the quality, and I think it's very unlucky. He's a couple of good chances. The one that he goes past into the side netting, he's under a bit of pressure. It's his first chance. He's not been playing. He's come back. So I can, as much as I'm moaning about not taking chances, the guy's literally been thrown on after having not played football for months. And we saw that when he first started to appear in the team. He looked a bit rusty. So he'll take a wee bit of time to get that ring rust. But he still looked fit and he still looked like the good bit of energy. And then I think it's just his knee for what would have otherwise have been a fantastic goal. A great ball in, good instinctive finish, comes in, meets it. puts his hair. He thinks, as I said, you see that energy, you see that a wee bit of aggression and fire, and he's pushing players and getting all this and trying to get us back into it. I think if that goes in, we maybe get another, maybe 1 or 2 chances. It was just damned as luck, wasn't it? That we didn't get anywhere to go with that one. Very, very disappointing. But yeah, it just leaves lots of questions. And then, of course, there is the goal for them, the fourth that gets cut off. Very, very fortunate. But again, there's another thing for me that annoys the life out of me, is the defending for that. There's 3 guys all with their hands behind their back, all leaning forward with their hands behind the back. And I know in this current climate, with VAR and handballs and what's a handball, what's no, players are scared to get, the ball coming off them and conceding a penalty. But what I will say is how can you properly defend against a shot or a guy running at you if you are crouched over with your hands behind your back? I'm just not having it. And that was the only slice of luck that we got in that game, is that was offside, because if that goes in, what I'm moaning about right now about the position of those defenders, I am going nuclear about it, because nobody commits to it. So, since we went through it all, let's break it down and have a wee quick look at the old stat attack to see what we've got here. I'll share this up from, I know, the BBC, but their stats are quite good. So let's have a wee look and see how the game panned out. At the end of the day, the stats mean nothing, but, I always like to have a wee look at it just for the sakes of having it. And here we go. This is what we got out of the game. So, in terms of how we fared, there we go. Celtic with all the possession, but as I say, it goes for nothing. Quite a lot of shots, but needless to say, nothing on target. As you can see, it's fairly even. There is enough wee bits off it in the game. But yeah, it's just bang average. Much of muchness. And I felt as well, though, at periods, Roma knew that they could allow us to have the ball. And I think that's the most important thing. A lot of teams know that they can allow Celtic to have as much of the ball as they want, because generally speaking, we are so predictable. Now, I says when I was on with Terry, maybe I'll watch it back and I will see wee periods, 10 minutes here, 5 minutes here, where I can see the fundamentals of what the manager's doing. I got that from the Hearts. I was disappointed. I was fuming. But when I watched it back, I could see that the first 20, 25 minutes were good. We looked potent. We looked exciting. We looked like we were going to just knock on the door and the goal was coming and we were going to cave. Then it levelled out. Then we would fall behind. Then we make the changes. And that's when we, funnily enough, have the best period of the entire game. For that 65 minutes to the end, that's when we look most threatening. And that's when all the tactical changes that was getting slagged off for come to the front and you actually see it. Tonight, it would only be, as I say, 5 minutes here. Maybe 10 minutes at a push there. And that's not enough. There wasn't a properly sustained period of the game to actually get excited about, or for me to take something positive from. People will talk about Ange. We spoke about Ange, and I am still with the manager. 100%. I'm not going to jump on the populist opinion to give this guy a hard time. He's been in the door a week. He's getting panelled by the mainstream media. It's horrendous. It's a witch hunt. It's a witch hunt from them. They want to try and undermine his credibility. They want to make him a joke figure, because there's always got to be a complete and utter fool in Glasgow. Nobody will mention the fact that Rangers get beat tonight as well, by the way, and are sitting on a lowly position with 1 point and have been garbage in all their games in Europe. That won't matter. Danny Rawls still brilliant. So just remember that. That's the skew that we're getting here. But looking at this, I didn't see enough. When Ange was struggling in his early period, you could see what we were trying to do, and you could see it more consistently. But you had the faith because you knew that the players that had been bought in were bought in by him, and it was just going to take time to bed in, and it was the start of the season. That's the unfortunate position that Wilfred Nancy finds himself in. He's came in unprecedented times. Like when have Celtic last had a mid-season appointment at such a desperate time. It just does not happen, right? I think maybe was it Lenny, maybe last time round, but it just doesn't happen. We're usually quite consistent, so he doesn't have that time, and he doesn't have the talent. Rodgers didn't have the talent, and now admittedly, Rodgers' football and brand of football was poor, in my opinion at least, and you could have gave him a lot more quality players, but I still think they would play the exact same kind of boring way. Martinelli came in, the performances weren't fire, but he ground out and found ways to get results. Nonce's coming in, said he'll do nuances, he'll do minor tweaks, but he hasn't. And I think that's what he needs to learn. I think that's what he needs to do. He needs to just between now and January, it needs to be damage limitation. It should be a case of we will work on the principles. This is how we are going to eventually play. Get used to it. Do it in all your training sessions, but then maybe don't do it for the start of games and adapt the system, change it. Maybe start with the previous formation, and if things are going your way, then slip in to the formation that you prefer to play, or vice versa. Use it for the start, and if it's not going that way, mix it up. Drop it in. You have to drop it in at times into competitive games. But I think he just needs damage control between now and January, because as I've said over and over and over on this channel, this is what he's got. And he needs to find a way to accentuate the positives. I know there isn't a lot of them, but whatever this team's positives, what these individual players, the best parts of their skill set is, play to the strengths of that and hide the bits that they're not very good at. And I just feel that that's the only. I think this system with the right players, with returning guys for injury, I genuinely believe it'll be exciting, brilliant football, and we will go back to swashbuckling ways where we're tanking teams. But at this moment in time, we just don't have the players to do it. Or we've got the players, but they just don't have the required quality. That's it. And I think he needs to look at it. And on that, then, let's see what the man had to say in terms of the game, because folk again weren't too happy about what the manager had to say. So I'll read this out to you, and you can let us know exactly what you think of it. People are saying it's waffle. It is what it is. So he said, the reality is we were not able to cope with the intensity. The first half was difficult. We were not able to come out of the pressure. It wasn't easy for my players. I don't like to talk about luck. The first goal didn't help us. State the obvious, and it is super early as well, which is obviously going to be deflating. Second half was better. I cannot tell you that the players didn't try. They did try. I'm not concerned. I really liked the reaction. Again, I can see maybe where he's coming for that. I wouldn't necessarily say the reaction when you're 3-0 down, because I think other than the Hatate chance, it's the reaction's neither here nor there, and the penalties for Tunis, even though we miss it. I would say maybe more about the second half. There was a bit more, particularly for Iheanacho, so there is a reaction there for the substitutions. They deserve at least to score one goal, and the dynamic could change. Aye, as we mentioned, if buts, maybes, take your chances, maybe it changes it. The result isn't what we want, but I've seen good things. I would like the results to change today. This is a bit difficult because my players deserve a bit more. The belief of my players is really strong. I respect the fans. They are really important for us. We play for them. I know where we are going. I can see a lot of good things. I believe in what we do. So, what's your thoughts on that? What is your thoughts on what the manager said there? People say that it's waffle, it's crap, it's usual, it's Russell Martin, it's dogs and caravans. And do you know what? As I said before when Paddy was moaning about it, this is the language of the modern manager. And it's also similarly echoing what Ange Postecoglou says. Now, I'm not directly comparing them, I'm just talking about the language. When things weren't going his way, he was saying, no, listen, trust me, I see enough. And again, we see the game, and that's the bit that really matters. But he'll see training, and he'll see how folk are adapting, and that's probably why he's super optimistic, because he will see that it's starting to slowly filter in. It's just not translating yet to the pitch, but unfortunately it needs to translate to the pitch quicker, faster and sooner, because if we don't see it, or we don't see glimmers of it or sustained periods of it, we will start to be having these questions and debating, and that's the thing. But for me, what else is he going to say? He has to say that. He has to say it. And, we also got a couple of words from Benjamin Negrin, where he literally just echoes the exact same thing and says about how the side is on them. They need to pick themselves up, stand and be counted and all that kind of stuff. Generic stuff. But that's exactly what we need. We need a reaction. And if these players are digesting the information and they are getting it on board, then we need to. I like that there. The positives is it could have been worse. It could have been 4-0, but I also feel that if Roma really, really wanted to, it could have been as many as really if they wanted there. But yes, it is what it is. The manager will continually be positive, but he needs to get it together come Sunday. Sunday is absolutely non-negotiable. Now, here's another thing that people are saying, and I want to get your thoughts on this here. Football's like saying fans are leaving early, doesn't agree with them doing it. What did you think of the atmosphere tonight? Because I thought, oh my God, it was like a morgue. It was one of the most peculiar atmospheres that I've heard at Celtic Park, let alone at a European game, Europa League or not, and God knows how long. Back to the sort of, banners on the top stand material. Now, I get that this will play into, well, that's what you get when you don't have the Green Brigade there and the fans are getting shut out and all that kind of stuff. Oh, sorry, Football's like saying he agrees with fans leaving early. Personally, I don't. And I get that there's the idea of protest and showing dissatisfaction and the booing, and I do listen. I understand the frustration, and maybe it's a visual to the board of how dissatisfied we are. But what I also will say is, and I've championed it a million times, is this manager needs an arm put around him. He needs embraced, as hard as that may well be, because he's only got 4 years of experience in the MLS and his team aren't that good and all the stuff that I've heard. And he sounds like Russell Martin and he sounds like you name other generic manager that folk don't like. I get it. I do get it. But he is a manager. And we talk about being the greatest fans in the world and the best support and the Celtic spirit and the community and the Celtic family and all that. And, that's Rangers-like behaviour. They boo their men off at full time and half time, and they call for managers' heads after a handful of games and move that wee cycle. Manager's a genius. Boo. Don't do that. We absolutely slaughter folk. We're doing that, yet I see us doing that. This manager needs an arm put around him, and it's hard to embrace something when it's as rough as this. It's hard to embrace taking a couple of hits in the face when you can't afford to, when you're in those deep championship rounds and you don't have time to get put down on the canvas. I understand all of this, but this is what we need to do. We need to just try and embrace him, even if you're not set on him. Get behind him. And that filters into the stadium. Leaving early and booing just plays into the narrative that's getting spun about. We know there's discontent between the fans and the board and at the club. We get that. We know that. But it just fuels the fire. And that will work its way into the player's mindset. And it will undoubtedly, for as positive a guy as he is, it will also eat into the manager's mindset. And as I say, we need to be completely unified. The atmosphere was terrible. And again, come back to it. I know the Green Brigade and guys weren't in, so that's going to be reduced noise. But I will also say that it's unexcusable from those who were there. That was almost a full house. And we have had games where the Green Brigade haven't been there during Martin O'Neill's point, when there was fantastic atmospheres. Fantastic. And there's no excuse. There is absolutely no excuse. Would a bit of noise in the stadium really have made that much of a difference? Who knows? But all I know is all I could hear was Roma fans singing. Absolutely singing, outmatching, tens of thousands of Celtic supporters in that stadium. and it was absolutely shambolic. And again, I can see folk are saying, it's, again, football's lies, very much don't turn up. I get it. But I'll never subscribe to that. I'll never subscribe to that, particularly in a time of fragility that Celtic are in. Because yes, we have a right and we should be protesting, we should be making our voice heard and being as visual as we can, sending a message that we're not happy. That's fine if the team are still looking comfortable and winning. But as we've seen, and again, hate mention it, COVID, that team was in free fall and they didn't have that support there to lift them. And it just sped up the decline. And that's what I think would happen here. That's why we really, really need to get behind this team, behind the manager, and try and push them on. You can make average players feel like 10 foot tall. And the manager can be as positive he wants, but it also needs that wee bit. We talk about the cliche, the 12th man. We need that. We need that wee sort of bit of backing. We need to push these guys over, lift them up in a time of sort of hardship and move them on. And listen, that even went for what happened with Managerial, right? Because the support was great during that period of time. And aside from a bit of energy and stuff coming into it, the support and the backing, and again, the putting the arm round Martin Neal and embracing this temporary appointment that a lot of us were, whether you want to admit it or not, were worried about, particularly because of like Simone and all that kind of stuff. We embraced it, we supported it, and we pushed the team on. And that's what we need to do, and completely get into this cup final. I'll be there, and I am convinced in my head and in my heart that I will be seeing the first trophy lift of many by Wilfred Nancy. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And as always, I'll hold my hands up. But I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, turned on this guy. I will not do that. I refuse to do it. I say it again, and I'll state my stance once more. End of the year, into January, transfer window, end of January. Then I can really start to formulate a proper opinion on him. He's trying to do a lot with a little, and he's trying to implement a different style of play with dog shit players. I'm not going to, he's not exempt for criticism. He needs to learn fast. He needs to bring in some of that pragmatic approach he's talking about. He needs to make the best of what he's got, hide the negatives, accentuate the positives, and find a way to win. So he's not exempt for any criticism, but I'm not going to jump all over him at such an early stage. It's uncouth. It's not what we should be doing. Sunday, I'm backing us fully to go and win that, but he needs to play the right guys. He needs to drop the Teneke idea. He needs to drop the Negrin idea. Maybe even drop another one or two guys in there, to be totally honest. Find a way to win that game, push on. If, and it is a big if, and I'm just using this for balance, people say, what if you lose that? Losing the cup final is unacceptable for me. 100% unacceptable. Non-negotiable, have to win it. However, if you says, right, you're going to lose it, how would that affect your judgment? And I'll repeat again, as I've said on Terry's show, as I said earlier on, if Celtic were playing good football, creating hundreds of chances, goalkeeper of the world day, you hit the post, you hit the bar, whatever, it's one of the ones, but loads of chances, more than ample that you could win it, and the football looks good, then I would say, right, okay, you lose the game, but we should have won it. Then I can see something to be positive about. If you have another performance like we did against Dundee, or like we did against St Mirren, or we fall away like we did against Hearts, and you don't really see any reaction, it's a different conversation. So that's roughly where I'm at with there. Oh, it's good to see your Turnbulls for the first time in a long time. He's very open-minded, but this guy is the final nail in the coffin. He's been a manager for 4 years, mate. I know. And that's the thing. As I said with Paddy earlier on, mate, it's always a tough thing. If you go for something that's a bit out of left field, you're criticised. If you go for something that's seen as safe and boring, you're criticised. Even as I say, the return of Rodgers, I was for it at the time, and then I started to remember the diminishing returns, but that was going back the way. Nobody wanted that. Ange, good pedigree, but folk didn't care about that. They'll tell you they did, and they knew everything about it, and they were fully behind it, but they weren't. There was a lot of folk that weren't. Left field, you're criticised. Ronnie Dylack all the way back, you're criticised. So it's a tough one. It really is a tough one. And I don't necessarily think that total experience necessarily translates to being right or wrong. And that applies to managers, and I think that also applies to players. If you're ready, you're ready. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. It's like when we talk about guys and go, they're young. They're 23. They've been at Celtic for X years, and then you look down at the Premier League, your son, you've got guys like 16, 17, and he's been chucked in, and he just gets it. Just gets it. Cheers for the nation, brother. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much for the support. So, yeah, but again, I'm being optimistic. Folk have maybe said about you too optimistic, but it's just simply based on time. I'm not going to be that guy. It's simply based on time. Too quick to give an assessment on him. And yeah, say what you will about the MLS, say about his track record, but the facts do remain that he did do a little. So he did a lot with very little over there by comparison. And I know it's different gravy and the pressure and the size of the club and the expectations, and it maybe doesn't scale up, but we need to at least let it run its course until there's a point where it either tips and goes the way that we all want it to go, or it maybe proves you right and it becomes untenable. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. One thing I probably would say is I don't think, and again, I'm not saying this because I'm feeding into the get rid of him thing. You get a 2.5-year contract, which was quite short, and I don't imagine he's on a lot of money. So unlike a Brendan Rodgers, hopefully it never goes this way, but if it were, God forbid, then I don't think they'd be that worried about it. But this is a massive appointment for this board. This board needed to get this right. And as much as I don't trust them as far as I could throw them, I also said that, right, if they're going with this guy, there must have been some sort of due diligence done on him. Because you don't just pluck a guy out of the MLS. You just don't unless you know something about them. And folk will go, aye, Tisdale told him about him. Maybe he did. But I just don't see how you just randomly pluck that guy out. It's like we eventually found out that Ange, for example, who was that other guy that we randomly plucked out of nowhere, was someone that was on the radar and that we'd been aware of and been looked at. And we scrambled and it became the emergency break glass appointment. But we still had a wee bit of oversight about him. Maybe this is the situation we found ourselves here. I still believe that Wilfred Nancy was meant to be a summer manager. That's what I thought. He was meant to be a summer manager with a view of pre-season starting, building it up, setting the ideas in over a good period where you've got time to sit and work on it, because it would be a complete change and departure from what we've been doing. But unfortunately, they've then meant, right, we've no choice here, we need to get him in. And that's why we find ourselves where we are. But yes, there's plenty to think about, and I just want to thank, we're about 150s there watching, as I say, listen, it's not the way that we like to meet up again and have to go through these things and a wee bit of sort of moaning and a wee bit of sort of things like that, that's it. But win, lose or draw, we're always here, we're always to talk about it and man up to it and toughen up and just get on. And we've got to put on the brave face and, the big boy and girl pants. We've got to get ourselves ready, because it's, there was a stat that was thrown out tonight and I went, wow. And I think it was like, can't remember the amount of years, but it was, he was and they probably took great satisfaction in pointing out he was the first new Celtic manager to lose his first 2 competitive games. And again, rocking a hard place. What first 2 games to come into? Top of the table clash against Hearts, game against Roma, third one's a cup final. So, it's rough as a badger's arse, as they'd say. But get these games out the way. Sunday could really be, and state the obvious, Steve-O, the catalyst to catapult you. Remember the Ange. Remember what was happening with Ange. Remember getting that first cup, just being a big shot in the arm that you needed. I think this could be a repeat of that again. And I'm very optimistic. Damage control between now and then. Just keep the pace, but get over it. There we go. Wim Janssen lost his first 2 league games. There we go. That turned out all right and all. And if I recall as well, he was also unfancied despite his experience. And yeah, he's not an Ange. Maybe he's not. I'm not saying, again, I'm just using him as an example of being a unfancied name. I'm not comparing them. So apples and oranges are 2 different things. But yeah, I'm not directly comparing them, but I'm using the simple comparison of is neither of them were fancied. And again, for the media, for the fan base at large, none of them were fancied. And you just got to see how it pans out. We've got to keep the faith, which is a term that I fucking hate, but we do because it's too early to do otherwise, I would say. So anyway, listen, thank you very much. It's went after 12 o'clock, and hopefully we'll be positive getting into Sunday. We'll be back to talk about it beforehand. We'll be back to talk about it after. And hopefully, I'm confident that we'll be sitting here and we'll have a big smile on our face. Wilfred Nonsi have delivered the first trophy and whisper it, I think, then go on and win the league. And then we'll take it from there. So anyway, thank you very much for taking time to join us. Hit the subscribe if you've not done it. Get a wee thumbs up. Give it a like and all that stuff. Take care of yourselves. Until the next time, God bless and hail, hail. We'll see you later.